why are so many people not happy with their lives?
Only human beings suffer from depression and die by suicide. Your brain and your mind does not care about your well-being. It does not care about you thriving. It does not care about your creativity. It only cares about you surviving. Most people are meditating wrong. Most people are meditating in a way that's actually either causing numbness or worsening their anxiety or causing too much effort.
So do you mind, if you do a live 5-minute, 7-minute meditation here?
If you were to erase all memories of the past and you cannot visualize a future, who are you in this moment? I'm concerned about people who meditate too much, concerned that there's actual problems, emotional issues that are not being addressed. Data that tells us that people with addiction are greatly helped by meditative practice. Leadership role today means a big part of your role is managing feelings. And managing feelings is one of the most difficult things to do. As the cliche goes, right, we are not human doings, we are human beings. And yet we continue to do and not be.
Yeah. Shyam, good to see you. Welcome back to SparX.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks like in the mental health, you are out there fighting this lone battle. I hope. Do you think things are, getting better as far as mental health is concerned, since we last talked?
Absolutely, Mukesh. I don't think it's a lone, endeavor anymore.
Yeah.
And more and more people are aware. When you talk to people, and I do these public talks, I'm seeing more people are very aware now of the need for mental health, the openness for therapy. I think awareness is growing in terms of the fact that we need to take care of our mental health. Now my focus is more on what kind of awareness are we building, what kind of information is being used, or rather, how a therapist learning. And one of the shifts in the last, I would say this year for me, has been not just general awareness, but really getting into making sure that we learn the right principles in terms of therapy and mental health for this country.
That's amazing. Good to hear that you think the awareness is increasing. But another thing that's increasing is, in general, mental health issues. I am just not able to understand, why are so many people not happy with their lives? Like nearly everyone has some kind of mental health issues: sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, anger. And sometimes people are aware of it. Sometimes they are not even aware of it. You just accept that's how life is. Why are so many people having so many mental health issues?
That's a very profound question, actually, because I think one way of understanding that question is, why do human beings suffer emotionally? Because it is a unique phenomenon to humans. And I think we have to appreciate that existence.
But aren't we suffering more now, or you think it's been like this for a while?
We have always had the hardware and therefore the capacity to suffer emotionally. And that same hardware created a society today that has amplified the nature of the suffering. So, we have to first understand the seeds of the discontent are sown in the hardware and softwares of our brains, which is unique. And I think one statistic that always blows my mind, and I don't know if other people are as impressed by that statistic, is this: that only human beings suffer from depression and die by suicide of all species. There's no other species on this planet that suffers this way emotionally.
Wow. So you're saying in nature, will not find an episode of an animal choosing to end its life.
I was just speculating the other day that, if you ever watch National Geographic and start appreciating how animals live, okay? And consider the life of the average deer in the African savanna. It has to go to drink water, a most essential thing. And every day when they go to drink water, there is a very real chance of dying, where a tiger can come and maul you. Your death stalks you in the same place that you're getting your nourishment and your water. Now, just ask ourselves, if that deer had been given human consciousness, they would all be making a beeline to a therapist's office. Every deer would be going to a therapist and saying, "Doctor, I can't live. Every time I go to drink water, there's this wretched tiger that's going to eat me up. What is the point of my existence?" So this is my point, that if you look at suffering from a human prism, every animal is suffering in that sense. They are always some fight for survival. But and from that prism, we have probably the best lives compared to most animals.
Yeah, the only parallel I can see for human is, the equivalent to going to watering hole is going to office and the prospect of facing the boss, or going home and facing somebody you may not want to face, right? And I mean, none of us face existential threat, right? We are all reasonably healthy, well off. Everyone has food on the table, and like all the basic needs are taken care of. And yet we have this almost a chronic fear and stress of something bad that can happen to us.
And this is what I was saying. This is the existential neurological dilemma for human beings, where given what happened in terms of our brain evolution and how it's different from every other species, we have a narrative self, a self that is contingent on past and future, and indeed is opposite most animals who live primarily, they're obligated to live in the present.
So are you saying also that what is in some ways is source of immense strength for us also, being able to construct this narrative and a story about the past and plans for the future, which has enabled the species to do so well, is also the seed for, all the suffering, because most of suffering in some ways, the stories we tell ourselves and what we believe, which are at some level just thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. What the part of the brain that gave us our strength as individuals and as a species is the source of our emotional distress. And therefore, in order to harness this power and not succumb to the stressful aspects of it, we have to learn how to use this. We have to learn how to use our brain at a meta level, in the same way that I know how to use a knife or any instrument, rather than the intuitive, implicit engagement that other animal species have, because they're fine. As you said, if the animal is not attacked in the here and now, if the threat is not temporally and spatially right now, right here, then they are not threatened. Whereas for human beings, you can be completely okay right here, right now. But if you can conjure up a threat anytime in any distant future, any place, that impinges on the same primal fight and flight survival parts of the brain. So this was the problem, where it's almost like, this is the worst kind of design. Imagine a factory where someone's trying to create a human being, and the way they designed it, first they took whatever was already there. And they said, let's just slap another circuit on top of it. It reminds you of that Boeing 737 scandal, you just try to overcorrect a design flaw by adding another neural program, but ultimately you end up with a machine that is really not optimal. It's not optimal. And I always like to tell people, your brain and your mind does not care about your well-being. It does not care about you thriving. It does not care about your creativity. It only cares about you surviving above all. And it's very unsophisticated when it comes to.
Yeah, I think this is also, this reminding of, this quote that goes something like this, I'm an old man, I've suffered a lot, most of which has never happened. Because, we just keep imagining all these things will happen and we're suffering in the moment. And we've all seen, I've seen it in my life, most of the anxieties that I worried about and so on. In fact, I think none of them ever manifested. But it just, we somehow have the circuitry to be able to imagine those situations, fear the worst, and then suffer for some time, for hours, sometime for days, sometime much longer, and then move on to next imagined crisis.
And as you said, that's we do that, but we also have the capacity to imagine our dreams, to have hopes, to visualize a better future, learn from mistakes of the past, learn from our ancestors. We don't reinvent the wheel as a species because we learn like that. And I think that's, to your point, that's exactly right. This is the source of our strength. It's also the source of our suffering. How do we use this for transformation rather than what often happens, rather than either hurting us, hurting others, or inhibiting our greatest growth?
So I think what you're saying is, anyone who's interested in doing something about their mental health have to somehow, through various tools and practices, need to develop much better relationship with their own brain. It cannot be used like, just other tool or biological, machinery that we carry, which is very useful. Also, eyes are useful for, but we don't need to really understand exactly how eyes function. But we really do need to understand, how our brains work.
That's right.
And in some ways, create that, almost like duality. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, some distance. And that's where I think meditation comes in, as a potentially very powerful practice. So let's talk about meditation. First of all, as a mental health professional, how important do you think meditation is in kind of an overall toolkit that you would use with patients or people who are interested in improving their mental health?
For me as a practitioner, it has been a very integral part of therapy. I cannot see transformation occurring without building the capacity for meditation, different contemplative practices. And right from the beginning of my career, I've been working on integrating that at a time when meditation was not really being seen by mainstream psychiatry, because the Americans hadn't yet said to the world that it's amazing. But you know that once they did, now people are getting into it, and we'll talk later why I think the American rendition of this is a little, quite reductionistic and missing the point. But I've been using it for a long time as a practitioner personally as well as in therapeutic practice. It's very important. Without meditation, a person cannot get in touch with their authentic self, with their true nature of existence.
So let's start from the very basics. What is meditation? It's I think most of us have heard that in some ways meditation, as mostly known today, is almost originated in these parts of the world, probably somewhere in India in north. But just for somebody who has not engaged in meditation, only heard about it, how should they visualize? What is it? What does it do?
Meditation is kind of hard to define, but I think the best definition is meditation is the intentional use of your awareness for certain goals. Simple definition. The use of the specific intentional use of your focus and awareness to create different mental states for specific goals. So, in other words, meditation, we all have awareness, we all have focus. So right now, for example, someone may be listening to this, someone has focus elsewhere. We follow our mind, we become our mind without noticing what the mind is doing. You know that Zen story about the guy going on a horse and he's going rapidly. Someone asks him, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I don't know. Ask my horse." And the point in meditation is first become aware that you are not the horse. You are on the horse of your mind. That for most people is untrained. And so when the horse goes to a beautiful place, you're happy. When it goes to a bad place, you're unhappy. So, of course, that's also the intent, but it's also part of the practice. So using focused awareness for different goals is probably a simple.
Let's talk a bit more about that. It's maybe just what is awareness? And for example, we do all kind of activities throughout the day. We are clearly conscious and making a deliberate choice. Today you made a choice to come here for this podcast shoot. We make a choice about what we're going to wear and so on, who we're going to meet.
Right.
Is that awareness, or awareness is somewhere registering it that you are making that choice? Because there is also autopilot execution. We are doing it and still we're making a choice. So how should we? On one hand, one can say you're always aware. Otherwise, how will you make choice and do things? But I think you're talking about different type of awareness.
Yeah, different kinds of awareness. It's playing with the different kinds of awareness to notice what happens. Now, for example, when people say, "I made a choice," really we know that choice often, by the way, the famous Benjamin Libet's experiment on free will, where they studied brainwave patterns in relationship to decision. So it was well constructed. And the point of the experiment was to ask the person to make a decision to, say, press a button, to note when that decision was made and to study brainwave patterns. What they found is that the subjective sense of, "I'm going to make the decision now," came after the brainwave had decided for the person. Which means that somewhere while the person says, "I want to do it now," the person is actually just moving because of the brain has told them. But of course, we're not aware of all of that. But increased awareness means, for example, right here, right now, what are you aware of? You may be aware of this conversation, a person watching, or they may be partially aware of it and their attention may be elsewhere. And if you were going to watch or do something with a meditative quality, it would be to have intentional connection with what you want to notice. One of the key problems with the human brain is, as the famous British philosopher Alan Watts said, we are not in our senses as a species. We are out of our senses, and that's a bizarre way of living. So how are we living if not through our senses? We are living through in a conceptual matrix which is that we are living in the world of thought construct, which is one step removed from reality. So, for example, if you see a hand, you don't see the hand, you see the word hand. You see this and you say hand. It opens up the conceptual idea of hand, which is a concept because there's no it's an arbitrary line for me to say this organ ends here. It is a human construct. So like that, we are being, at all times, we're receiving raw sensory input, but most human beings immediately, instead of immersing in sensory input, are now living in thought construct. This is an important point to understand because I believe, and as we'll talk today in more detail, that most people are meditating wrong. Most people are meditating in a way that's actually either causing numbness or worsening their anxiety or causing too much effort. Most may be an overstatement, I don't know how many, but many people are doing it wrong. And so, if you, for example, if I say to somebody, notice the temperature in your body, the person will accurately say, I feel warm. But have you felt it, or have you done what I call a quick dipstick check? Your mind has gone into the subjective, what should I say, ultimately inarticulable experience of warmth. You can use language to describe warmth, but if someone has never experienced any temperature and warmth, they will never feel it through language. So language is not reality. Language is a powerful way in which humans have that's how we are made, and that gives us that ability now to create worlds that are not based on the here and now. We take it for granted. And because we do it almost through obligation, neurological obligation.
And does meditation help you get into, here and now, or it's other way around? You need to cultivate, presence as almost like step one to be able to meditate. Because when you start most meditation practice, there's usually effort being put to, bring your attention here and now. Like what's the, how should one,
It's a great question, Mukesh. And I think there are two aspects to this. If you think of your effort to hold your mind to a specific point like the here and now, every time the mind moves away and you bring it back, think of it like one rep in the gym. It is strengthening your muscle. The effort to keep your attention is at a meta level building your attention itself. So what you're cultivating is the strength and quality of your attention. And there are many meditative practices with different ends, but one, I think, big goal of meditation from an Eastern perspective, which is lost now in the Western interpretations, is the cultivation of what was called buddhi. Calm, clear awareness. And it's interesting because, when you look at the sort of neurological underpinnings, you start seeing that, this was a great insight that they posited that your mind is composed of different components. And what you want is to cultivate what's called buddhi. Buddhi is the calm, clear awareness that is not tainted by feelings or misconceptions or ego or attachment. It is dispassionate, calm, clear, and always wise. And the idea was that we all have buddhi, but we don't live. We have an awakened buddhi. And of course, awakening buddhi is being the Buddha. And this was a big part to clarify your awareness. And the way you do it is firstly understanding in this play between you could use any practice. Let's say I say, look, focus on this glass of water. Now you're starting to look at the water. Initially, you may use a lot of force and intent to look at it. You're very aware that I am looking at the water. And I think a lot of meditation gets stuck there. When I am looking at the water, that's kind of like doing an exam. That's not meditation. In meditation, there's gradual immersion, complete immersion in that which you observe, and so that the observer and the observed become one. There isn't I am looking at the glass of water. There isn't I am hearing the sounds. There just is the experience being experienced. You don't need an I to experience the world. And most times you're experiencing the world with a very central narrative of I. To experience the world as flowing experience in the here and now, that the I is stilled because you're not trying to resist anything or change anything, but you're fully here, so you're not zoning out either. It is often, for most human beings, the first time they've experienced full presence, full awareness, without the burden of I. The last time you experienced that was No, might have experienced it in flow or as a child almost regularly. So this is one of the effects of meditation, and transforms the way then you experience yourself and the way you experience the world.
Right. So I think there's a lot there we'll have to unpack step by step. First and foremost, I'm assuming most people listening to this podcast probably have never meditated.
Yes.
Some people would have tried to meditate, but initially what I hear, and I think, I think I recall from my early days also trying to meditate, it tends to be very hard. It's surprising, simple activity of, closing your eyes or not and focusing on something. And we, obviously the mind wanders immediately. And I think in meditation, people call it monkey mind.
Yeah.
What is the thing, just again, the neuro substrate of that? Why does, first of all, our mind wander so much? Why is that a bad thing? And what should a beginner meditators be aware of that, so that,
Yeah.
so that they don't start and they realize, "Boss, I can't do this, mere bas ka nahi hai to, focus on one thing, and so I'll just give up."
So firstly, for the beginner, I want to remind them it should not be, and it's not a fight. It's not effortful. It's not about blanking the mind. Don't try to blank the mind.
Thoughts will continue to arise.
Thoughts will continue, mind will wander. Accept it.
Yeah.
We're not here to fight with that, actually. Think of meditation as, for the first time, trying to just witness and see how the mind operates. So also remember that just like going to the gym, it's about a simple practice that has to be done consistently before you see results. So you just keep that in mind. And the first thing that people can do, and I think we have to break it down. I actually recommend different kinds of initial meditations for different kinds of personalities or types of people, if you like, and we can break that down. But I think the first step of meditation is usually just noticing the tendency of your mind to wander and to gently bring it back to whatever that practice is, and to do it with a lot of patience and just to see what happens. And interestingly, when you approach meditation with a sense of wanting an outcome, it's ironically, that's what we're trying to get out of in a way. The idea is that most of life, we want outcomes or we don't want certain outcomes. And so happiness is really about most people running away from bad outcome and running towards good outcome. And so life feels like a perennial chase. Also, because when we live, we ignore 99% of things that are happening to us because our mind deems it irrelevant. We focus only on 1% or less of stimuli. Out of that 1%, we idiosyncratically assign labels. Some is good, some is bad. And this is how we live a fragmented life. So even the first step of meditation is so profound when you think about it, which is saying, and let's talk about one technique just for the sake of anchoring this. Let's say we are using present moment awareness, which is Vipassana, also called mindfulness, unfortunately, in the West, as you know, my distaste of that word, but it really means present moment awareness. If you do that, that itself is very profound. You're noticing your mind's tendency to go into past and future. You're noticing your mind trying to resist certain things, getting bored with certain things. You don't have to change any of that. Just notice and just gently bring it back. Let's say, I say, look at the glass or notice your breath, whatever it is. So you start getting acquainted with that. That starts shifting things for you when you keep doing it and various things.
So maybe may I just add from my experience early days of trying to learn meditation. I think very first step was whatever time frame is, maybe 5 minutes or 7 minutes. Just sit in one place still, like irrespective of what happens. Even if your mind wanders, you're daydreaming, fantasizing, whatever, doesn't matter. I think that's baby step one. That I can just without looking at my phone or calling someone or reading a book, I'm just going to sit to do nothing. Next step is what you're saying, cultivating, just paying attention to your thoughts.
Right.
And again, I think typical experiences, you start, I think most people start with paying attention to maybe their breathing. So you're paying attention to, breathe in, breathe out. And after 3-4 breaths, again, your mind wanders, thinking about some particular situation at office, or what you should, holiday plans or what you want to tell somebody and so on. But then even after a minute or so, you recognize that, I'm supposed to be meditating. Let me come back to, my breath, and then go back to, first breath, second breath. That's decent start, right? And just being able to bring, whenever you notice, come back to that, and just some object of focus, whether it's breath or something else.
Couple of things. I think absolutely agree with you. A couple of things I want to elaborate on here. One is that, and this is why I believe that meditation needs to be integrated for many people with therapy. And the first point, which is, let's begin by sitting. And the reason I'm saying this, a lot of people come to meditation because they're dealing with stress and anxiety. Now, when you come to meditation to deal with stress and anxiety, while it's a powerful tool, this is the integration that many times, because you have to sit with yourself, and certain feelings, say grief or pain or things you have denied in yourself, you're now sitting because you're not distracting yourself as great many people do actually. That's the point. If you feel a lot of intense feelings coming up and can't tolerate it, and that's distracting you from meditation, that's the time I would say you also one needs to go and.
So it can happen to beginner meditation.
Yes. For a lot of beginners who are especially have heard that meditation will reduce the anxiety, but that anxiety is coming from some unprocessed trauma, grief, problems in their life. The danger here, if you don't process that through therapy also, is that meditation can become escapism. This is why in my work I believe in integration. That meditation, if done incorrectly, can lead to a subjective feeling of I'm okay, but actually is a cloak of numbness or apathy. You know, I'm zoned out. I've realized myself outside. I'm detached totally from the world. While that sounds like like spiritual enlightenment, it could be escapism, and that's the thing I want. We have to be
right. And Shyam, I think we'll talk a lot more about various meditation techniques and so on. But I realize that I think we've been talking about meditation, and someone who has never meditated or never meditated successfully, this might be a just strange concept. So do you mind, if you do a live 5-minute, 7-minute meditation here? I know like you have done a lot of guided meditation in the past. You've created a whole series of,
together,
right, this audio library for people to do self-guided meditation. So maybe, let's go back to that zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll be great if you can lead, you decide 5-minute, 7-minute type of meditation. I'll meditate along. I would like to request, all the listeners who are going to be watching to also follow along.
So we can begin by first finding a comfortable position. But this is an important aspect. Every step is going to bring us some insights. So the first thing is bring your attention to your body and adjust yourself so that you're comfortable. Feet on the floor and hands on the lap. Palms facing upwards. So the reason we do that is this allows your abdomen, your chest, your shoulders to relax. It's also a position of surrendering defense a little bit. We go through life with a lot of defenses because the mind imagines threat to all that we hold dear, all that we desire. So we're going to let go of those defenses because you are safe right here, right now. And closing your eyes, you make an intention. And I like this idea of it. It's very useful to make an intention. You can say to yourself that no matter what is happening in my life right now, no matter what problems I have going on, I'm going to take a few minutes away from all of that just to experience what is happening right here, right now. I can always go back to solving problems later. But right now, I'm going to bring my full attention as best as I can to this practice. And having made that intention, go ahead and start paying attention to your breath by taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now you notice I'm making a soft sighing sound. And I want you to do that. Make a sighing sound out through your mouth when you breathe out. This is a sigh of relief. It's your body saying that right now I'm relieved to be letting go. Letting go of air, breath that is being held, energy that is being held. So breathe in through your nose, and when you breathe in, relax through your nose. You don't have to lift your shoulders or elevate your shoulders or your chest. Allow your belly to relax. So as the air comes in, your belly will go outwards. And you can give a sigh of relief. I want you to imagine that you're a traveler who's been traveling a very long time. with bags being carried on your head, on your back, on your chest, your shoulders. You've been carrying this burden without realizing it. But now you're going to get a chance to keep it down. If only for a few moments, if you're used to carrying it. But with each out breath, I want you to consider, visualize what it would feel like to let go of all this baggage, this burden of heaviness. The sigh is that you're done carrying all this. Breathe into your nose and sigh out all that heaviness. It's a sigh of relief. And you can actually make a louder sound if you like. We're in the privacy of your house, so don't be embarrassed. It's a sigh of relief. A sigh of letting go. Giving your body adequate time to breathe out. And take a few more breaths like that. Just wait until all the air leaves your body. It's like a gradually deflating balloon. And feel the texture of air entering your body through the nose, the sharpness and coldness. And the softness and warmth of air as it leaves your body. Letting go. Now let your breathing return to its natural rhythms. So breathing through your nose again. We're going to bring our attention to what's happening right now. First, by noticing all the sounds around you. So your attention is on sounds. The quality of attention is gentle. The effort is gentle, meaning you're not straining to hear the sounds. You're reminding yourself to notice, experience the sounds. It's a state of receptivity, curiosity, patience. Your mind may describe the sounds, saying this sound is boring or loud or soft, or it's a car or whatever it might be. Let that go and bring your attention to the nature of the sounds, the quality of the sounds, the tonality, the texture. There's nothing else you have to do. If the mind, the attention moves away from the sounds, just notice when that happens and gently bring it back. We're going to move our attention now to sensations, the perception of touch. In this moment, experience the contact of your body on the chair. And by experience, I don't mean just notice and describe. I mean, go there to that area of contact between the body and the chair. Experience it. Become aware of the weight of your body, the way the pressure of your body is on the seat. Just get a sense of sensations in your body from head to toe. Your whole body. Just experience it, whatever you notice. can be quite relaxing to accept all the sensations, to not try to resist anything, or you don't have to change anything. Your presence is accepting all the sensations. Now just notice how your body is moving with each breath. You don't have to do anything. Experience it. Notice the rhythm of your body moving with each breath. The quality of your attention is gentle. It's not like a tight effort. It's quite relaxed. Accepting and experiencing the sensation of the movements of your body with each breath. Move your attention now to the contact between your body and the chair again. Notice the contact of air on your skin. Notice any light shining through your eyelids. Then slowly and gently, you can open your eyes, stretch, and take a deep breath. Stretch, and you'll notice how your body is feeling, how your mind is feeling, how your breath is feeling. What we did was a very simple practice. How do you feel?
I'm fully zoned out, Shyam. I need some effort to come back to it. But feel, yeah, very refreshed and calm. And I think I can see also body language changing. Before the meditation, I was, pretty keen to get going and, thinking about my questions, etc. Right now, I just feel like I'm just here, we'll have nice conversation. Podcast will take care of itself.
Yeah, same here. I mean, that's the point. I think there's a misconception that the Buddha or the Buddhas are always, we have to get to a place where always is equanimity. Mm-hmm. That's not it's like cycling.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic process of maintaining balance.
Mm-hmm. Right. So this was, great, I guess, beginning, meditation session. I hope, people listening to it were able to do and got a glimpse of what does starting on a meditation journey look like. I just finished a thread, let's say people who get inspired to take on meditation. By the way, I think this is a great reminder for myself. I've been meditating for a long time, but never continuously, like on period, off periods. So like reminder to self to restart from today. And, but what are the tools and resources that people can leverage to just start their meditation journey?
Guided meditations. A good guided meditation is a good place to start. Mm-hmm. Because it gives you, what I did today was a guided meditation where I'm talking about what to do. Mm-hmm. So I would say the first thing, if someone is restless and tends to have a lot of anxiety or a lot of worries, is to start with body scan meditation. Mm-hmm. So body scan or yoga nidra, also called by our friends in the West as what? Non-sleep deep
Non-sleep deep rest, NSDR.
Yes. Very sad, but yoga nidra, which means body scan, noticing the sensations in your body, is a very good anchoring exercise. It's often the first meditation practice I recommend for people, most people in today's world.
You can do body scan sitting or you have to be lying down?
Again, you can do it any time, any place, but for most beginners, I would say lying down. And I would say in the evening, 2 times I would recommend it. One, when you go to bed at night, it'll really anchor still the overthinking, the past present thing, past future thinking rather. And the second time is in the morning actually, because many people don't wake up fully rested. And if you're not fully rested in the morning, 10 minutes of yoga nidra can get you going in.
But can you do body scan on your own, or that has to be guided in some way?
Good question. Initially, I would definitely say guided. Because especially when the mind is very distracted, it's hard to give yourself the reminders to notice what is happening. Mm-hmm. The other meditation the other thing I'd point out is for people who are very restless, do physical activity before you do seated meditation. Get rid of some or discharge some of that energy. Which is why in yoga, the idea was you did all the asanas and then you went into dhyana.
Yeah.
And yoga, that's amazing. The principles of that, which I really endorse. So someone is there and you find you couldn't do this or you're too restless. Firstly, never feel there's something wrong with a restless mind. You're not here to try to whip the mind into shape or control the mind. That metaphor should go.
Yeah.
A lot of people think meditation is about control. It's quite the contrary. Meditation is about letting go of control with full awareness.
Right.
And the principle is when you do that, your mind will still. Don't try to fight your mind.
Yeah. Got it. So Yoga Nidra is one you're saying is starting one.
But followed by physical activity for those who are quite restless.
Yes. So there's one type of meditation, meditation, you hear about all these different techniques. So maybe can you just, a little bit of overview of what are some of the more common techniques which are accessible to, people who are starting out?
You can divide meditation practices based on technique or goal. So that's one way to do it. Now, in terms of technique, one is focus meditations, where you focus on different points of focus. Yeah. The point of focus could be a candle flame, could be an object, an idol, or could be body, or could be breath. So those are all focus meditation.
Yeah.
Another is what J. Krishnamurti called choiceless awareness, what is probably what mindfulness refers to, which is present moment, non-judgmental awareness.
Yeah.
So that's a whole class of techniques where you're saying, I will just watch whatever's happening right now.
So if let's say I were to practice it right now, I'm just going to pay more attention to what you're saying, the surroundings here, and not really thinking about, planning things or planning my next question. Just like try to be fully present here. And
that is a meditation. So in other words, the meditative quality, the idea is you're doing meditation. You should not think of it as a respite from daily life and as a small pocket of happiness in an otherwise stressful life. You should think of it as a reminder of how we essentially are and how we should essentially be throughout all of our life. You can be meditative in that sense. So that's one. So one is focus. The other practices are, let's call them body practices, which could be walking meditation, Tai Chi, yoga itself, where you bring body, breath, and mind together, is a form of meditation. So I'd call that somatic or body-based meditations. The third thing I would call visualization exercises, which are using the mind to create sensory or visual experiences that can help you achieve certain mental states. The next category of meditation would be what I call inquiry or self-reflection. So, who am I? I am, or reflecting on certain ideas or certain states of mind, like loving kindness, like empathy, like compassion. Those are very specific kinds of meditative practices, including things like in Tibetan Buddhism and Tonglen meditation, which is about discharging, giving loving kindness and removing the toxicity of the world using breath.
Yeah.
Contemplating death and mortality, death meditation. So those are very specific meditations.
Chanting in this other...
I was going to say, then chanting. Chanting as an attempt, often one is chanting for equanimity, but also I think the idea of a whole class of meditations which are primarily trying to transcend the self and try what we would call transcendental practices. Although in my opinion, that's the goal of all meditation ultimately. Clarifying the self means transcending the self because there is no self.
Yeah.
That is what you find in meditation. And I can pose a simple question to our listeners. You don't need to do anything to answer this question. If you were to erase all memories of the past and you cannot visualize a future, who are you in this moment? In this very moment, without past and future, who are you? It's almost like there's no identity in this moment, is there? Who are you in this moment? Who am I in this moment? We just are, And I think this is the point, that our frame of reference and the center of gravity should be here and now, which is of no self, from where we do all the things that our selves do, if that makes sense. We're living the other way around, where we think this is the weird thing. Oh, there's no self. This means this is the wrong thing. No. This is reality because your senses are informing of you what is happening right here, right now. The rest is a construct which we must and should have. I'm not saying you can live like this, but I think we need to shift the way we are experiencing ourselves fundamentally.
So what we're saying is, this idea of self is rooted very much in your memories and the story you're telling. In some ways, kind of constructed thing,
Yes.
which is very important. I guess it must serve, significant evolutionary purpose, but it's not a physical reality. Like through contemplation, you can learn to see for what it is,
Yeah.
a constructive reality, and that distance can perhaps allow you to engage with your brain in a different manner than you would otherwise.
No, because the heart of existential pain is the attachment to these narratives. Without the narrative, there's no problem. The Zen saying is no self, no problem. And it doesn't mean you die. It means that the narrative selves, if you don't attach to that, this is our pain, right? That we have such a rich sense of identity, which is attached to multiple things, whether it is how people treat us or, relationships or aspirations. So that's the problem. How can you... It's very hard to navigate life like that.
Yeah.
You can't be an animal, I don't think there's any, it's not an evolutionary, we're trying to evolve here. So the idea is not to shut off that part of the brain. Actually, I think what I want to really underline here is that when the sense of self is comfortable, the questions about the self dissolve. It's just like when your hand is hurting, you're thinking about it all the time. If it's not, you're just using it. It's the same thing about the self. To inquire about the self, to powerfully deconstruct the self is part of the process, and you're often fueled by existential pain and anxiety. But when you just come here and now, and you realize all of those ideas. By the way, Mukesh, this is why I don't like Western ideas of language of higher versions of self, highest version of self, the better version.
Ego dissolution.
That's what it's about, which is that if you don't have a self, why are you getting into what's the highest version of the self?
Right. Got it. Yeah, and that little bit, maybe going into, the philosophy of meditation, but it's coming back to more, technique and practice. The meditation is also in some ways a journey, right, for people. And, starting with 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's in some ways first step. I mean, if you talk, there are these monks, they meditate all day. There are, people who you read about them and they will have a year-long, silence, contemplation, or even longer. Like for just, common people like, just you and me, what should be our, goal in terms of, building and cultivating a relationship with meditation? What's practical, doable, and also sustainable over long period of time?
I'm suspicious of people who are meditating too much.
Yeah.
Suspicious not of them, rather. Let me rephrase that more accurate. I'm concerned about people who meditate too much, concerned that there's actual problems, emotional issues that are not being addressed, and that meditation has become a respite.
Right.
Because sure, monks stay away from society and are in silent isolation for years, but so is a person in prison or mental institutions or, So I think that what is happening qualitatively, internally, subjectively is important.
Yeah.
I actually think meditation should ultimately enhance your life goals. And to me, with rare exceptions, that often means greater engagement in things. Therefore, if someone is, escaped from life, then it's probably not useful.
No, got it. But, I think we all look for, a bit of prescription. We'll say like work out 1 hour a day is generally good for you, or 7 to 8 hours sleep is good for you. So, someone who wants to really incorporate meditation, is 10 minutes a day great? Or the answer is, doesn't matter, just some.
I would start with 10 minutes once a day. And once the person gets a taste of the benefits of it, they would like to do it a little more, at which point I would say do 15, 20 minutes. Now, you could then do it once or twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. I think that the key here is you're trying to connect with the state of unconditional relaxation, unconditional security, and full emotion in this moment, letting go of past and future. That will inform your sense of self at a very implicit, visceral, experiential level, where it's like your center of gravity shifts from having to preserve the narratives to just a sense of safety in your gut. That's why I said it's an experiential thing. When you feel that, that is actually you returning to your original essential state. This is the important thing to understand about meditation. We're not trying to make one relax. You're not trying to make yourself relax.
Yeah.
You just notice relaxation occurs quite naturally when you let go of all this analysis and come into the present moment. Once you feel that, that is your center of gravity. You have now felt it through maybe even just doing 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Now, automatically, what you will try to do probably at this stage of your practice is live as much as possible from center. So what happens then is that you may use a couple of breath practices even between a meeting on the way to, on the way to work. So you won't quantify like that. And finally, you may probably just be able to slip into that state at all times. Which is what ultimately happens. Which is, yes, you're knocked off that, or you use past and present orientation as you must to get ahead in life and to learn, but you're able to come back to center of gravity.
I noticed in even this short practice we did, you focus a lot on breathing. And even in the yoga practice, right? There's yoga, there is dhyan with meditation and pranayam.
Yeah.
And there's so many different breathing techniques. Can you also just elaborate on why breathing is so important, and how can one leverage breathing to cultivate a different states of mind?
That's a great question, because breath is a window into your unconscious brain and unconscious mind. Breath is the only bodily function that's both under autonomic and voluntary control, which means most of the time your autonomic nervous system is managing it, or it will manage it all the time, rather.
Yeah.
But you can also intervene, better do it. But we can also get into it. There's no other body function like that. What does that mean? That means that when we modify breath, we are modifying the autonomic nervous system. Now, what happens in the autonomic, and autonomic, as the name implies, it's a part of the nervous system that controls autonomic functions, that is blood pressure, breathing, heart rate, and digestion, and all of the other things, right? That is where the distress is occurring, because that has shifted into fight or flight. When that has happened, the breathing also shifts in pattern. The pattern shift in breath is where one, diaphragmatic breathing reduces, and there's more thoracic breathing, which means your chest starts moving more than it should, because it's trying to increase vital capacity in response to signals of threat, preparing for fight or flight. It's a beautiful mechanism.
Yeah.
So now what happens, for most people, by the way, is this becomes a little tight, the abdomen, and so you breathe like this, right? So when we breathe in, now it's instead of abdomen going outward and I breathe in, you're doing chest elevation more, and this is tight.
Yeah.
This is for multiple reasons. This is also the softest, most vulnerable part of the body.
Yeah.
So when the brain detects threat, it is now tightening and guarding the abdomen and getting ready for fighting. Most of the world today is breathing in this fight or flight way. And doctors today assume that the normal breath is 15 to 16 breaths a minute, when actually 6 to 8 breaths is probably healthier. Most boardrooms are going at 18 to 20 breaths a minute, if you notice, very thoracic breath. So what happens now with the brain, because there's signals of threat, the breathing has become threatened, and the exhalation becomes shortened, and inhalation-exhalation ratio becomes almost equal. Normally, your exhalation should be much longer.
Yeah.
There's something called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which is a heart rate variability breath to breath. Every time you breathe out, it increases, presses the brake of the nervous system, slows down the nervous system. What we call parasympathetic vagal tone increases each breath.
Yeah.
So when you breathe out, each time you're breathing out, your heart rate is slowing. Each time you're breathing in, your heart rate is increasing. I want you to notice this. For those of you at home, try this out. Just breathe out. Okay, right here, right now. Just breathe in through your nose. Okay. Do that a couple of times. And I want you to do this at the end of the out breath. After all the air has left you, notice your mind. See if you can even think at that time. See if you can summon up thoughts at the end of the out breath, just at the pause of the. Just before the breath comes in, after all the breath has left you, you will notice that it's almost hard to think. Have you noticed that?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if this has been written out, or readers can tell me whether this has been observed, and this has been my personal observation through my meditation practice. And because you've noticed the word expiration, exhalation, expire, and the idea is there is actually no self at the moment of exhalation. Each time we come to connect with bliss, every moment you're coming with shunya, which is starting point, nothing, infinity, everything.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, right? So the more time we spend in inhalation, we're going away from that, where we're thinking, doing. The more time we spend in exhalation, the more relaxation there is. Because we are a bilateral mind-body network, when we shift our breath, it sends signals back to the brain saying, hey, there's no problem, relax. So this is why breath is important. Now, what can you do? In other words, it's a miraculous opportunity to go into the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
This is where Western therapy was doing talk, talking about stuff when you can't access the stuff through language. Whereas the East, they were saying, hey, just go into breath. That's where all the emotions are. And that's why the integration is important. So breathing out, that's all you got to do initially. 4-7-8 breathing, which is a popular thing, does exactly that, which is breathe into the count of 4, hold to the count of 7, breathe out to the count of 8.
Let's do it at least one round. So
We'll do one round.
visualize.
And
So
I want us to think, I want you to do it in the right way, listeners, which is when the breath is going out, you're not pushing it out, you're making space rather. For the air to leave you. So the idea here is letting go. Unconsciously, the breath is being held because the brain is holding. Okay, so we're going to let go. So let's try it out. 4-7-8 breathing. Very simple. Breathe in through the nose for 4. Count. I'll do the count. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 7. Out through the mouth for 8. We're going to start. Breathe in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, out through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, out through the mouth. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do it one more time. You can count to yourself. Breathing in to the count of 4. Allowing your belly to expand as you breathe in. Holding to the count of 7. Noticing that pressure building. And then releasing it out through the mouth. Letting go. Allowing the universe to receive this energy, this air, to the count of 8. And then you can let your breathing return to its natural rhythms and notice how you feel. Now these breaths would have shifted the autonomic nervous system to a more parasympathetic state. At the heart of a lot of our disease, mind or body, is an altered autonomic nervous system, causing inflammation, disease from head to toe.
Yeah. Which I agree that, while, the practice of yoga recognized the power of breathing, thousands of years ago, but today we just, medical system, healing, just overall, we don't recognize the power of breathing. It's like still very under leveraged in terms of what it can do to all of our health, right? There's a free tool available to all of us, requires a little bit of training,
Correct.
accessible any time of the day. It can shift our mood, it can shift, overall just how we feel.
Blood pressure,
and just so many benefits, but just not enough conversation. I don't know if you, again, unfortunately, Western book, but James Nestor's book, Breathe, this is an outstanding book, and to his credit, he's looked at both sides as well as all the ancient practices, right? Just so eye opener of how much breath can do, to your health.
I think it's underused, definitely. And most things that need people's effort, but you cannot sell a product, are underused. This is the problem.
Yeah. And there's no way to monetize also.
There was a machine, a device, which was FDA approved for the treatment of blood pressure using breath, called Respirator, a few years ago in the US. So people have tried various products, but honestly, you don't need products per se. It's a practice that people have to do.
Yeah. What do we know about, science of, meditation? What does it do to our brain? Why does it work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let's understand what happens in the brain. By understanding that the brain is not one unified machine or one unified unit. There are different components of the brain, often working to different ends. And the metaphor, which was used for, since ancient times for the untrained mind, which you can call the untrained brain, is that you're like a charioteer with multiple horses, but not all aligned in the same direction.
Yeah.
What meditation ultimately will do is cause integration of various circuits, better synergy and convergence of various neural circuits, decreasing conflict. Now, what are the specific things? So you can think of your brain as having, for the sake of this discussion, let's divide it into three compartments. One is called the default mode network. And the default mode network of the brain, which has various substructures, is essentially the part of the brain that is to do with self-referential thinking, daydreaming, overthinking. Both of those, anything that is to do with the internal reflections is the default mode network working. Then you have the, what we call the task positive networks, which is really to look at performance, what to do for the organism, what are they supposed to focus on externally. So that has networks that are looking outward, that are thinking, planning, what we call the central executive networks, which include structures of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which are essentially about planning. You also have the attention networks that are designed to bring attention to the whatever you're seeing and whatever is stimulating you. Then you have something what we'd call, I would say, you can think of this as a structure in between external and internal called the salience networks. Now, the salience networks, which include structures like the anterior insular and anterior cingulate cortex, these are the parts of the brain. These are to do with what is salient, what is important for you to focus on. Are you supposed to focus on this person's conversation? Are you supposed to focus on your own internal thoughts? What is relevant? How does your body feel? These are the information that is also coming in, and that allows a person to either focus outwards or inwards. Now, what meditation does, and this is an important thing to understand about neuroscience, that we do not know what the subjective experience of the person is often. So when I tell people to meditate, I don't know exactly whether one person saying I'm feeling good is the same as the other person's brain, which is saying it's feeling good. So let me just tell you what the science tells us, right? The science tells us that, so let's put it this way. So suppose someone is overthinking, it means their DMN or default mode network is overactive, but also the other part I didn't talk about was obviously the amygdala and the limbic system, which is the emotional part. Now, if the default mode network, which is the overthinking part of the brain, is receiving information of anxiety from the amygdala, these thoughts will become negative. So it's not as if the DMN itself is bad. If you can have DMN activity, but your daydreaming, creative thinking is beautiful. So this is how you must interpret various neuroscience studies. The ideal brain should be able to shift to wherever we want, and there should be good synchrony between all of these parts. Now, when people are using the higher part of the brain to control mind wandering, that in the brain scan will be seen as increased dorsolateral prefrontal cortical activity, which is the higher part of the brain, impinging on, say, amygdala activity, which is trying to suppress the amygdala. Now, this person may feel good and they may feel focused, but in my opinion, and of course, when you understand the neuroscience, we'll agree that that is not perhaps a good state to be. Because it's showing a lot of effort in the brain to achieve a certain mental state. And this is the problem I have with a lot of meditation practices and studies, especially Western mindfulness, which I feel is doing this. My hypothesis is what they are creating is a state of mind where there's increased DLPFC activity, which has been corroborated by a lot of studies, but I don't think there's enough synchrony between different circuits. Really advanced meditators will actually again have decreased DLPFC activity, because now the DMN, that's the dorsal, the default mode network, is not being informed by negativity. So there's actually quietening and integration of various circuits in, and that is what I would call an enlightened brain. Not necessarily the studies that are showing that long-term meditators have great DLPFC or increased prefrontal activity. A mathematician could have that. A chess player could have that. Same thing when they say, we are seeing increased gamma waves on EEG on these people. Now, gamma is high frequency activity. Sure, you could be kind of enlightened, but you also could be ruminating and thinking and being a chess player or a mathematician. So we have to really look at how not only each subpart works, how they're working in tandem. So ultimately, the right brain, which through meditation will be at a meta level, and this is my problem with neuroreductionism. When I talked about all these brain parts, who is the person behind the brain? That's a hard problem in neurology, as you know. What's a consciousness? I think ultimately that's what science will teach us, that ultimately meditation will result in a consciousness that results in a very fluid and versatile brain, not one kind of brain. There are times you'll use the DMPFC, there are times, all of this will happen without much effort.
Right. And do you think, so we talked about meditation from the perspective of just feeling more centered, more present, in some ways, just achieving that quietness of mind. But some of the other, condition that, people suffer, like let's say addiction of, compulsive behavior or things.
Correct.
Do you think meditation has a role to play there?
100%. So there's some very interesting, obviously anecdotal and rather, what should I say, non-neuroscience based data that tells us that people with addiction are greatly helped by meditative practices. The key reason it can help people with addiction is to rewire the reward system of the brain. One of the problems with addiction is the way the dopaminergic systems, the ventral striatum, various other dopaminergic systems, what is rewarding that is the external addictive behavior. When people meditate, it changes the way reward systems are engineered in a way so that you can get internally rewarded. And dopamine, in that sense, could be released without having such novel experiences that you're seeking. The other thing, of course, is anxiety and other mental health conditions are a big part of addiction and can ease with that. So in addition with other therapy, it's a very powerful thing for addiction, no doubt about it.
What about, meditation for people in management or even, leadership role, whether, right now the world is, it's very precariously balanced. We are literally on the verge of Third World War, so many conflicts around the world, so many big egos clashing, etc. Do you think, if just more people meditate, we can handle with these situations, in a more calmer fashion?
100%. I absolutely agree. I absolutely recommend that anyone in a leadership role should be meditating because leadership role today means a big part of your role is managing feelings. And managing feelings is one of the most difficult things to do without, doing one's own self-work. Great leadership is about managing your own feelings and the other person's feelings. And, we have been engineered as a species to pick up threat signals from the leader more than anybody else. So in the primate colonies, if the leader was distressed, the entire colony would be distressed. It's the same thing in companies now. When I said the breath is going at 16 to 18 breaths a minute, it's the metronome of that breath, if you like, is the rapidity with which the CEO is breathing. If the CEO or the leader comes to the boardroom and he's breathing like this, and even if he says, hey, it's all good, guys, we hear the message loud and clear. And I don't think leaders appreciate sometimes just how powerful that is, because I think a lot of leaders, because they're smart, accomplished, achievers, they underestimate non-logical emotional influences. When data, of course, we know now that's the biggest role or influence in your own decisions and certainly in interpersonal and leadership communication. So I cannot emphasize enough that a leadership journey has to be one of one's own enlightenment, actually, in a way,
Yeah, one thing I've actually not been able to practice, but I've been wanting to for a long period of time. I think all meetings should start with, 5 minutes of silence. And people focusing on their breathing, slowing down, probably doing this 4, 7, 8 practice. And the balance 55 minutes will be dramatically better. It just, I have no doubt, it's going to be immensely powerful.
That would be a really, simple, but I think a very amazing corporate practice to do. Which is why I guess we said prayer before meals in many cultures. We give thanks, slow the mind down, bring it to that state of parasympathetic activity.
And Shyam, so I think, we have covered a lot of ground about, potential benefits of meditation and simple steps for people to start. But then there are, all these meditation retreats, Vipassana has, this 10-day retreat has become reasonably popular, but also sounds like on one hand, it's a lot of commitment. But do you think, considering something like that to just kick start, just shifting your overall understanding of meditation significantly through one of this, week-long or 10-day silent retreat is a possible good way to start for some people?
I think for some people, definitely, it's very popular. I personally am not a fan of that being the introduction because it's quite rigorous.
So work your way up to that.
I would say work your way and integrate it with your life. If you feel, though, for people who feel I'm never going to get started unless I have a fairly immersive experience, then by all means, I would though recommend, like, if you're going to start with a retreat, do a weekend course or a 2-hour retreat, dip your toes in and then try to integrate that with life. So that's would be my recommendation.
Where does one look for these 2-hour retreats or weekend retreats?
There are a lot of people who do provide courses, in your local community. But I think increasingly, I'm seeing obviously a lot of digital solutions. I have mixed feelings about that. I think we live in a world where it's hard to go on retreats and therefore it's useful. But I think if one had the chance to go on a live, meditation class, nothing like that. I'm also, doing more work on digital platforms in terms of meditation, and we'll probably have a few more retreats also. Especially, I'm reminded after this conversation that it is important.
So, one of the things we'll probably just, the team here, as part of this episode, we'll just compile a list of retreats, which are available in various parts of India. And I think it's, I think just, I have not done 10-day retreats, but I've done kind of custom 2-day retreats. And my awareness definitely shifts a lot. I come back feeling just really calm and not, bothered about things.
Yeah.
I'm also more determined to incorporate meditation in my everyday life, which a lot of time fizzles out over a period of time, I'll probably...
What are the barriers, do you think? I mean, one is busyness, I guess.
For me, busyness is not a problem. I think for a lot of things, I'm able to create plenty of time. So I think it's not busyness. I think it's... I think I'll have to really delve deeper into it. Probably that.
Maybe there's a certain boredom that people do feel with meditation.
Yeah.
They hear the word meditation. I think some people may switch off just hearing the word meditation. It's not cool. I think that's the problem. It is, though. Here's the deal, right? Recently, now we are seeing this resurgence of the psychedelic, what potentially as treatments in psychiatry. When you think about it, firstly, obviously, psychedelics are not new. They were in the 70s. They were big, and there's a resurgence. But when you see the effect of psychedelics on the brain, it is attempting to create a shortcut into the Zen meditative Satori state of ego dissolution.
Yeah.
And people, therefore, I think the younger generation clearly understand that ego dissolution or transcendence is an amazing experience, and one that perhaps is deeply sought after by all human beings, which is what Maslow, finally, before he passed away, he added transcendence on top of the Maslow's hierarchy. And I think anyone who goes through life knows that is something that we aspire to, right?
Yeah, I think, as I'm just reflecting on just my own kind of challenge with this, I realize in some ways, I think we're all, and I'm definitely addicted to doing. And meditation, one of very few things is about not doing. So, it just does not feel productive. You working out is in some ways, again, you're doing, reading a book or listening to his podcast, or like, I think we're just somehow very highly conditioned.
Yeah.
Especially, I would say in last 20, 25 years, before that, just getting bored, having nothing to do was a big part of life.
Correct.
And now we just don't have that, window at all where I don't think anyone ever says I'm bored because, it's just literally, 5 inches away. You just pull this thing out of your pocket and, there is, all the world entertainment, at your fingertips, 24/7.
Yeah. Boredom is unfortunately, as you said, not a common human experience these days.
Yeah.
You're right. It is boring. And that is why, it's not stimulating enough. Perhaps that's why people don't...
Which I'm saying is a bad thing because we know boredom is also at the heart of, creativity. You would just not make this connection. So I'm just speculating that's probably for at least, the reason I'm not able to probably incorporate it on a regular basis is perhaps because, it doesn't feel like, doing something.
As the cliche goes, right, we are not human doings, we are human beings. And yet we continue to do and not be.
Yeah.
I think partly it's an existential thing. Have people really considered why are you doing? What are you doing? To what end? Where are you going?
Yeah.
It is a scary thought for us to contemplate the meaning of our actions. What am I doing? Why am I doing? When we were younger, it was clear for us why we were doing, and they told us why we were doing, and we adopted those. Somewhere along the way, in most people's life journeys, especially when you appreciate the transience of one's life, I think one comes to this question, what's all this about? Why am I doing? These are deep questions which are existential in nature. And I think meditation or just being is existentially anxiety-provoking for human beings who are used to having meaning by doing.
Yeah.
And I was saying that I think it's very important actually to be okay with that anxiety.
Yeah.
Look, I think that we also live in a culture where we keep trying to be happy, which means we try not to feel negative. And meditation is also telling us that there is no negative and positive. Your mind and you subjectively might like certain experiences, but in trying to get away from the negative, and pursuing happiness is part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's creating a constant restlessness in our society, which is an addiction itself, So the reason we don't want to stop moving is because we are scared there's nothing underneath, and then there's emptiness. But meditation will teach us, no, there's complete relaxation when you stop doing and you just be.
Yeah, I think so. There is, there's so much we know about meditation, both from, ancient practices, and it's also, definitely a lot of meditative practices originated in India.
Yeah, 100%.
But many other cultures and many other religions, they've acknowledged, the need and incorporate in some way or shape or form. Now we also have a lot of science supporting it. What do you think needs to be done to just make it's a free tool available to all of us with potentially very profound implications for our health, overall well-being? What can one do to promote and make sure more and more people adopt just this just simple 10-minute tool in pretty much their everyday life?
Like, I think what you said earlier was, I think, really hit home, which was that, say a corporate, an organization could institute simple measures to integrate meditation or mindfulness into corporate life, For example, the meetings you said. I think modeling by influencers in our society, whether it's leaders, parents, teachers, that's very important. And, to some extent, I met people, for example, who were inspired by hearing that Federer learned meditation and that helped him, or Djokovic and all these guys, right? So I think we're increasingly, we are exposed to role models who are talking about the benefits of meditation and so on. That'll help. I think we have to accept that technology is here to stay. And therefore, using technology in the right way to create meditative practices, which sounds, paradoxical, but I think is compatible.
It's going to happen. I think in the next version of GPT, we should be able to say, hey, help me with a 15-minute meditation session in Shyam's voice based on that podcast episode that he did, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Or, even I'm very curious about the next wave of AR glasses and what they can do for meditative visualization practices.
Yeah.
VR I have tried, I was not happy with at all because I think it imposes a physiological problem. The eyes are focused so close, so that's not going to work. But I think certainly, as you were saying, AI, AR, these are technologies that can be leveraged to create pleasant meditative experiences, perhaps that are not as effortful to do.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to realize that. I think we are all just, as you said, I think that's probably the key phrase for people to take away that, do you want to be human doings or you want to be human beings?
Right.
And to be a human being, you need to learn how to be in the moment at least some part of the day and cultivate that awareness. And meditation is probably the most powerful tool. It's a free tool.
Yeah.
Requires some effort to get used to it, but I think the return from it is just, profound.
Given the existential challenge of the kind of brain we have as humans, which I said it imposes definitely an existential challenge for us, but also opportunity.
Yeah.
Meditation is absolutely, I think one has to learn techniques to manage the mind. That's what meditation is.
Yeah.
So there's no denying that because we have such a complex brain, you have to learn how to use this mind and how to use this brain, not just using it, which is what we were always taught, but we were not taught at a meta level how to use it. And that's what meditation is about. They're unlocks for your potential, they're unlocks for health, and they will unlock everything in terms of managing your brain and directing your energies towards your goals.
Amazing. Shyam, I think you continue to do outstanding work in the space of mental health in the country, and it was amazing, despite being a trained doctor in the West, you have gone so deep into, ancient Indian practices and incorporating all of that in, how we approach overall mental well-being. I think we covered a lot of ground about, what meditation is, what meditation can do for people, and how people can start their journey. Hopefully, this episode should inspire a lot of people to adopt meditation and stay with this practice. And I'll definitely go back and, like I, almost promise here on camera that I will do everything I can to have, 15, 20 minute of meditation practice in my life every day. And, I've seen the benefit in the past, and I have no doubt, being able to do that for a sustained period of time will do good things in my life. So once again, thank you, Shyam, for taking the time and sharing, your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Mukesh, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on this podcast, and I really enjoy our conversations. And I hope it was useful for our listeners. Thank
Absolutely. Thanks.
you. Thank you.
At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.